Welcome back, new episode. I want to talk about the treats that we have as kids. So treats, I mean the fancy foods that we get maybe very few times, maybe once a year or so. Let's see, what's the real prime food in Romania was perhaps bananas. Bananas was just like you go purchase a small gold bar or something like this. Was really it's like a really gift of the gifts banana. It makes no sense. I'm in Canada and bananas are almost the cheapest fruits basically. But back then was exceptional to eat bananas. And I will talk separately about those that had privilege with the party, but I'm talking the vast majority of the population. So I consider myself to represent a good part of the population. Obviously, some people were doing worse than me, others better, but this is, say, the majority. So a banana for us was, I don't know what to say, much more than a birthday present. And I fully understand that people feel this is completely unrealistic, but that's how it was. And just I'm trying to dig into my memory a little bit because obviously this is back in childhood, but I do remember at least once that I ate banana and perhaps twice. That may have been more than that, but it's just that my memory doesn't have at this point. And I did remember that once I went to a birthday party, it was in my block apartment, one of my friends. And we did went, I just had to go upstairs, maybe 3 stairs or so. And that person, I believe the father of that person was in the army. And I'm going to describe a little later in the video who was privileged actually, who was those people who had privilege in the country. And that person, because was an officer in the army, perhaps a higher ranked officer, that person had extra advantages, if you want. And at this birthday party, we were perhaps maybe 15 kids or so. And at some point, we had cakes. Cakes wasn't a problem because you just bake the cake at home. You would get, actually cocoa wasn't that much of a problem. I remember I oftentimes had cocoa at home. So you had cocoa, you have sugar, eggs, flour. You can bake a cake very easily. It was not a big deal. It's just that those things, chocolate and exotic fruits, were absolutely different thing. So I do remember that at some point there was a plate like this, and the person brought maybe 2 bananas. I just cannot stop myself laughing at this. 2 bananas. The bananas were already peeled off, and the bananas were chopped in small rounds, like just small cylinders. When you chop them, maybe this thick or so, 1 centimeter thick. So there was maybe 30-40 pieces of banana on that plate because we were several kids. So each had to take maybe 2 bits or so, 2 pieces or so. And well, there was most of us took 2 bits, but there was one guy who was really badly educated or not educated much, and this guy just grabbed several bits. He ran away. He actually that's so crazy. He actually, I remember, he put a few of them in his pockets. That gives you the idea. Really, fresh banana in the pockets, peeled banana. And so this is one of the things, the times I do remember eating a banana. Perhaps it was a second or maybe a third time, but I just don't recall them properly. What you see, these things, you could possibly get them in stores. But I was saying in the other video that whenever they would bring those rationalized food in stores, being sugar, being butter, or worse, usually was the meat, the whatever beef, pork was, there were really big lines, up to 4, 5, 6 hour lines. However, that's not the worst. The worst was items, I mean the longest lines, items such as Nescafe, Cigars, I think Romanians are unfortunately smoking pretty much Kent or something like this. But also, if you see a huge line, and I think I'm going to make a video with only pictures from that time, so you can get an idea what I'm all describing in these videos. If you would see a huge line, and I really mean huge, you will see if I can get back to that photo that I saw once, then you knew it was perhaps bananas or oranges, or pretty much that's it. Some of these two exotic, or maybe Nescafe, one of these two exotic things, two, three exotic things. I don't know what else to say. Hopefully, I'm going to make that video and put those pictures, and you will figure out by yourself what I think that tells much more than I can tell in words. Now, obviously, you don't. I mean, that was like a treat, and that was not your basic food. So those parents or grandparents that you perhaps, hopefully, you'll see in that line, those were doing this for their children. So it was this idea to give your kid something that he've never had, or he had once or twice in his life. It was more than a Christmas present, much more than that. So the parents were really, you will see those lines were absolutely insane. You will wait. I don't want to give numbers, but you will see by the number of people was absolutely insane. And the reality of the life is that you never know the amount of the stock that was delivered to that store. So you never know if maybe the line will stop in the middle of the line and they say it's empty, it's finished, no more things, nothing, go home. So you never knew that. Yeah, I was saying that birthday cake, that wasn't a problem. And my mother also would bake for me and for my brother quite often times, like cakes, basic cakes with butter, eggs, cocoa, and stuff like this. That was my sweet things that I would eat through the year, if you want, quite often actually. And funnily enough, I was saying that we didn't really, it was almost impossible to find any kind of chocolate in stores. And I mean the garbageous chocolate that you could imagine, it was almost impossible. However, my mother was baking chocolate at home. She was doing this with dry, I think it's dry milk or evaporated milk, whatever that kind of powder, milk powder, I think, with cocoa. Was actually pretty decent, quite good. Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, I need to talk about something else. You see, Romania, when I say that we didn't have much things, this is mostly in the last years of the dictatorship. In the last, maybe it all started maybe especially in the last 10 years. It got worse in the 5-10 years, but it was always like this. It's just that it got worse and worse and worse by the time passing, because it was always a problem with managing the economy. And this is going to be a subject in another video, how the communist economy is collapsing, basically, how it just cannot survive. It's not a long-term prosperous economy. It just cannot be like that. And I'll explain that in another video that's going to be dedicated to this subject. But the things were going worse, and people had less and less things, including heat at homes or anything else, gasoline for cars. Things got much worse at the end. However, that doesn't mean the country did not produce things. What happens is that there was a whole story of, like I said, poor economic management, and Ceausescu wanted to just tighten the belt on the population and to export more things. There was a matter of national debt and so on, but he really redirected the production towards export, and at the same time he really cut into imports, because all this, like bananas, coffee if you want, whatever else, Pepsi. I need to talk maybe about the Pepsi, another golden bar. All these things were coming from imports, and he really decided to just it's over with imports. We're spending too much dollars for imports. The population doesn't need that. So that's when the people started to really feel this lack of treats, if you want. Um, I was saying that the production of the country didn't stop. And Romania, if you look maybe in the history, it's a country that has always had produced a lot of wheat, also a lot of oil. But the oil problem is we still have oil refinery and oil extraction, but we did fought with the Germans in the Second World War, and the Germans needed for their army a lot of oil to just advance their army for the vehicles and stuff, tanks and so on. And one of the main sources of oil for Germany was the oil from Romania. Basically, they almost drained the resources of oil in Romania. That's when Romania lost like one of the natural resources. Really was drained. It's still extracting a little bit today, but it's just the reserves are just not fully depleted, but really much low. Imagine the amount of oil Germany needed to move all those millions of equipment, soldier armies across Europe towards Russia and so on. So that wasn't ecological by today's standards in any way. However, the crop production was very good. We did export a lot of cereals, and strangely enough, we did have quite a bit of trouble to buy bread, especially in the countryside. Countryside, surprisingly. In Bucharest, I do remember we still would get bread with very little lines. The bread was really poor quality, but I do remember very well the farmers were coming to the capital of the country, Bucharest, and I do remember this image of farmers, especially old ladies, with huge bags, plastic bags filled with bread, carrying on their back, going back to the train to go to the countryside. It was quite impressive. But we still did have things like fruits for export. And I have this memory at some point, my parents knew someone or knew someone who knew someone, and we took a visit to a place where they were growing grapes for export, both for export and for wines. Romania do some really nice sweet wines, but they were also exporting those grapes. I guess the people in France were tasting those grapes, never knew that actually they're tasting the food that we never got in our own country. So I did pay a visit with my parents at those grapes cultures, which we have been told were strictly reserved for export and perhaps to the class that was the leading class in Romania. And I did taste those grapes, and I never seen such grapes in the stores ever. But those were crazy. Those grapes, like huge white grapes, it's like you put a Channel 5 perfume on them. That's how tasty those things were. It was just very good quality of produce and fruits as well, because Romania, it's a pretty, let's just call it, at least it was a pretty clean country. If you go to the Western Europe, they put so much pesticide, herbicide, such intense cultures, so much restriction, genetical selections, that their cultures are no longer, they look really great. I mean, you take a tomato from Germany, I guess, is going to look really great. Same in Canada, but it's not going to taste great. And in Romania, during those times, because we didn't have this pressure on the production and all these pesticides and stuff like this, I have to say that the production, the fruits that we were getting, I didn't eat much veggies, just like most kids, I guess, but the fruits I did eat. And those fruits, I just cannot forget that. I remember my mother was buying, the fruits was never a problem. The fruits like strawberries, apples, whatever, but we didn't get the quality of the fruits that was meant for export, like those grapes, but we were getting local fruits. And I do remember that my mother was purchasing several kilos of strawberries. She was mixing this with sugar, but she was putting that bit like a what's the name for the recipient like this? She was putting several kilos of strawberries in the kitchen, and when I would enter the kitchen, the whole kitchen will smell the strawberries. The perfume was just insane, and the taste as well. The taste is the same thing. It's just something I've never ever seen since then, neither in Canada and neither back in Romania, because I did visit Romania after '89. They switched the production to the European standards, and it went absolutely downhill from there. The taste, that is, the taste and maybe the smell too. So the quality of the fruits now is absolutely completely different than what it was during Ceausescu time, when it was much more natural, much less modified and all the things. So the fruits that we'll get then were just so tasty, crazy tasty, and it's lost now, unfortunately. That's one of the downside of, if you want, intense production and European standards. And European are really serious with these standards. They are just asking every single country in Eastern Europe to obey by these standards. And yeah, quality is going downhill, but the fruits still look good. So you get the looks, but you don't get the taste, basically. Let's see here. I did. Okay, so this is the part when perhaps it's a good thing that to explain a little bit who are the people who were doing better during those times. If you take people who were working like engineers, my parents were engineers. In Romania, there was a lot of engineers, way too many actually. Engineers or whatever, factory workers, these are the people that will just struggle to get things to eat, to get clothes, and to get everything basic necessity. However, there were specific types of workers that were really living a different life, not like in Occident, but just different opportunities, if I can say so. Let's just take doctors, for instance. There was this mentality that if you go to a doctor, you have to bring something, either money, either maybe a chicken, a live chicken preferably, because he keeps it in the office before he goes home, so better a live chicken, eggs, anything like this, whatever. Obviously cigarettes, coffee, these were perfect for doctors, and this was just a basic consultation. If you had to have a surgery, then it's really a question of money. If you don't pay, maybe you are going to get a surgery, but you are perhaps going to be postponed, and perhaps the doctor is going to be a little tired that day, so he's going to rush a little bit through your ankle or whatever surgery it was. So you were definitely recommended to bring something consistent, and I mean consistent. And this is true for everyone, even for farmers, everyone. You have money, you don't have money, you just manage to bring some money to that doctor. And I'll give you an example. Someone close to me, this person, both parents were doctors. One was a doctor, a family doctor, a generalist in a factory, and the other was a surgeon. Now, the doctor's salary wasn't that big, wasn't like in Canada or United States. It was just a normal salary. However, at the end, in '89, these two people who had a lot of kids, they had already 3 apartments and quite a bit of money on the side, cash. This is all from their patients, basically. That's where from the money was coming from. The other category that was doing very well too was teacher, surprisingly, because we had to go pass these exams to get to the university and also to the college. And these exams were really tough. And there was, again, another type of mentality that you need to get private lessons with a teacher. Because you had several exams, you need to get a private lessons to a math teacher, to a Romanian language teacher, something like that. And sometimes it was private lessons, but sometimes we will just go in group because that was cheapest. And usually we'll go to the teacher home, his apartment, basically. And these private classes were really expensive for the times, were very expensive. So these people were making a lot of money. Just cash like that, income obviously is not official, is there's no tax or something like this on it. Now, the other category of people who are doing quite well were the directors, because there were no owners, directors and workers in stores such as food stores. I'm not going to call it grocery because it wasn't a grocery, it was just basic item foods in there. These people were just deviating part of the delivery. They were just hiding part of the delivery. They had deals with the people who do delivery, and they were just reselling part of the delivery on the black market. So these people always had food, no problem whatsoever for them, and they also had connections. So these people were also doing pretty good. Perhaps also the people in the military, but especially the higher ranks, had better contacts and opportunities. Border workers, the border workers were perceiving a lot of black like underpayments for passing illegally things, like all the black markets were passing through the border, so they obviously they were getting a cut. And yeah, there were all workers at various factories who could steal something from those factories and resell it. And there's still two last categories that I would like to talk about them separately. The first category, surprisingly, is gypsies. And the second category is going to be all the party members, all the people into the Securitate, all the repressive organization, and everything around it. Now, let's just talk the gypsies, because I think it's funny. Now, when I'm saying gypsies were nomad people. And unfortunately, the modernization of the country just forced them to get sedentarized and just to stop moving around. So the gypsies had to find a way to live. And I do remember at least a part of them were on the black market. They were selling jeans or something like this, cigars. They were having always kind of contacts, especially with Turkey, I think, and maybe with Bulgaria too, but especially with Turkey. They were having contacts, and they were bringing, like I said, jeans. Also, they were bringing small chewing gums, which had surprises, like a small picture inside with a car or with a plane or something like this. And these were actually our treats as kids. There was also always a gypsy woman by the schoolyard, always there, and she always usually had either seeds like pumpkin seeds, salty and roasted, and she would sell us these seeds, like was $2-3, 2-3 coins if you want a small amount. And she was selling also these gums. And actually we were collecting we call this surprise. Inside the gum was like a small paper with a picture, and we are playing these gums. There was games like to win these surprises. These surprises were kind of valuable for us, for kids. So these were the gypsies. And I also remember the gypsies when I was at seashores. They had no right to sell those seeds, pumpkin, sunflower seeds. And I do remember they had those bags with seeds to them. I do remember a scene where the police almost captured them, and they started to run across the street like this, and with those bags with seeds. And because obviously the police was faster to run than those old gypsy ladies, they started to throw those bags in the people courts yards, just behind the yard walls, just to escape the what was actually the suspect part. Okay, so this was with the gypsies, and these people, because they were selling they were selling those seeds. It seems small, like two coins every portion or seed or so, but figure out at the end of the day they were making hundreds of coins every day. And those seeds, actually they were stealing the seeds from the lands, from the crops. They were always stealing, they never paid them. So these gypsies actually had quite a few money. They were usually working in groups. They were quite organized, but they managed to accumulate quite some amounts of money. They were not maybe rich, but they surely have in the hundreds of thousands or so. And it's perhaps, unfortunately for them, they couldn't spend this money because there's nothing to buy, maybe a car, but nothing more to buy for them. So they just pile up the money in their homes, not in the bank account, in the homes illegally. And they were the people who had money. And after 89, they started going to Germany, buying cars or maybe stealing cars a lot, and then keep doing this business. So these were kind of underground businessmen. Now, I was saying that the party members, all these persons related or into the oppressive organizations such as the Securitate or also the police, the regular street police. Now, these people had a few advantages, like the people in the party. One of the advantage, and also in the Securitate organization, one of the advantage, I'm not sure how spread was this, how common was this, is that they were living in houses, not in block apartments, houses with a small court and small like lawn around. Bucharest is a city that has a lot of these houses and also a lot of block apartments. It's half about. So the Securitate people and the people from the party got these houses, and oftentimes these houses have been taken from the actual owners when the communists took over the power in Romania in 45, 50s. So they actually, the communists took the private property, but they also thrown in prison a lot of people. And I mean a lot of people like politicians, but also personality and intellectual people. They thrown those people in prison and then stole their properties, their homes, their residency. And they gave these homes to the Securitate personnel, to the party personnel, and everybody around this clique, around this gang of people. They were really occupying the homes of someone else. They didn't own these homes legally, basically. So this was one of the big advantages for them to have a home, because Ceausescu, to keep this state of fear and control and oppression, he had to give to the people who are keeping the state advantages. That's how he kept the state in control, basically. So all those who are really close to his party and his apparatus and all organizations that were ruling the country, all these people had advantages like this, like private homes, cars, and also because they had to feed somehow these people, they had to purchase food. They were never going to stay in line, or they were never going to stay in going to the food store that we were going into to find basically nothing. I don't even remember what was on the shelves, like 2-3 weird articles, hundreds of bags of, I don't remember. Maybe someone watching this video can let us know what was in those stores. So those people from the Securitate and from political party and associated to them, they will have their own stores, their own grocery stores. And these stores were within the city. It was just like a normal store, except that if myself or my parents would want to walk into that store, there would be someone perhaps at the door or inside the store who would ask, "What are you doing here? Who are you to come in here? Just walk by the door if you don't have trouble." So those stores were specifically for the privileged people. And also they have this kind of, we call this online commands by phone. So they had a series of phone numbers. They will call those numbers, and there is like a, what is that in French is entrepot. It's just like a warehouse. It's a warehouse with phones, with several receptionists that will answer the phones, and they just take the order, the address, and you pay. I guess they will pay upon receiving the items. And these warehouses were fully furnished with everything you want to have in Romania. I mean, all those treats, meat, butter, everything you need to have at home. They will have it, and you just need to pick up the phone, call them. This is my address. I want this much kilos of this salami, whatever you want to get. Deliver it to my address here, and you pay upon reception or something like this. I don't know how was the payment done basically. And these phone numbers were strictly reserved to those privileged people. We did not have these phone numbers. Maybe if ever one of the phone would leak to the general population, perhaps they will change that phone number. It was just we had no access to these warehouses, except I did hear about a little bit from my friends where I was living in that block apartment, that there were a few numbers for the population, at least for a few of those items, but those phone numbers would never answer. So you can ask any Romanian from that time. We knew these stories. I've never tried myself or my parents. We knew these stories that it seems there were grandparents that were just the phones were not digital back then. We had that rotating dial. So it seems there were grandparents that were staying at home all day long, and they will continuously compose the number, do the dial the number, and keep the phone. It was going to sound busy. They put down the phone, pick up the phone again, dial again, and I've heard they were doing this for the whole day, basically, for hours to no end, for the whole next day. And I'm not sure what was the rate of success of finally getting a receptionist on the other end. Maybe once a week, if you will call 10 hours or 5 hours a day for the whole week, maybe once a week you got lucky, maybe less than that. These were the numbers for the public. So it was really almost impossible to get food this way, to order food. And this food, again, that was better food, and you didn't have to stay in line, but you will have to call perhaps a few thousand times. I don't know how many times. And I'm only saying that these numbers for the population, for the general population, this is things that I've heard. I've never tried. I don't know if it's really true. I guess it's going to be true, but that was the small, the small droplets that finally we can get a little bit of that goodies. So this was the privilege for the people around the party, the people in Securitate. I think they could also travel abroad easier. I'm not so sure about this. But they can also get other goodies if you want other things. One of the trends in Romania is that I believe, at least inside the cities, big cities, I believe that most of the people will have a TV screen. There was those big the catalog TVs. However, most of the TVs were black and white, and having a color screen was really like an achievement, if you want. And usually that will come, most of the time that will come from black market, but I think Romania also, the Romanian industry will produce a brand of color screen. I'm not sure how the quality was about that thing or durability, but it was difficult to get. Not necessarily that was very expensive, it's just that was really difficult to get one. And the other thing that was very trendy by I would say the late 80s, somewhere past 85, 86, was the VCRs. So the VCR, video recorder and player, which were already on the market in the United States, in Occident, basically from the late 70s. They started to get into Romania, and the people in Securitate were really very easy to get one of these for themselves. So they were just, this was like a status thing. If you had a VCR at home, was pretty much like a status thing. And it was really expensive from what I remember, at least in the first years. I do have a number, which it seems to me, it looks a little bit exaggerate, that I do remember people saying one VCR was worth one new car in Romania. So I don't know how real is this or not. Perhaps maybe in the beginning, less so as the time would advance, the cost will come down. But I would guess I haven't gone to every Securitate guy home. Actually, I've never gone to a Securitate guy home. But I would guess most people into the security would be able to get one of these VCRs and a color TV screen. For the rest of the population, it was almost impossible, basically impossible. All right, let's see. I do have more. And uh, I would like maybe to talk about maybe three funny things. Okay, let's. One of the things. So we did live, most of us, in those big apartment blocks, like 10 floors, 8 and 12 floors high, and we have balconies on the side. And because we needed more space, we wanted to put things on the balcony. The winters were cold. Oftentimes we'll try to just weld few metal bars. All those buildings were in concrete or something like this. So we weld metal bars, and we'll put big thick glasses to close the balcony, just to keep it a little bit warmer in the winter. And I do remember my parents did spend quite a bit of money. We had quite a long balcony, and spent quite a bit of money to get someone to weld those bars and to install those big pieces of glass, which were really thick. And most people would try to do that to their home. And it appears at some point Ceausescu was just visiting, or were just cruising with his car inside the city at some place, some random street. Oftentimes he was actually going from his residency to the offices. He was just driving through the city like this for, I don't know, quite a distance with his car, and all the traffic will be stopped, and he will drive like this every morning to job, and every afternoon going back home. But it seems that at some point, either he or his wife did notice that those block apartments had the balconies with windows on them, which was not by construction. The buildings have not been constructed with the balcony closed by windows. And either Ceausescu, either his wife, we will never know, thought that this was ugly. This was not aesthetical. It's just, that's not, I mean, maybe he said, that's not how I build this build, because he thought the country, he owned the country. He thought he owned everything in the country. He thought that the country was really like his home. So he said something, perhaps, this is what we heard later on. It's just like we got this kind of information from person to person. It's arriving to us. So it seems that he said something that, this doesn't look good. Take them down. And when he would say that, that was like an order. So obviously he would say that to some whatever responsible guy was in there in the ministry or something like this. Order came to every single resident of Bucharest, or at least what I believe, every single one. I'm not sure if this was for a special district or no, but I wouldn't think there is a reason for a special district, because we were really far away from the center of the city where the Ceausescu is traveling. So we were really remote. He never went to my place around my block or stuff. So I believe the order was for the entire city. And I mean, that's, I don't know what's the number of apartment buildings and apartments in those apartment buildings with balconies. Everybody had to tear down those windows that were closing the balconies. I guess I'm speechless. And I do remember back then, my mother was already single. My father, they both divorced. My father was living in another place. And this order was, from what I remember, was quite, you have this much time, and then we are going to give you a fee, a penalty or something like this, if you don't tear down that balcony enclosure. So my mother was alone. I don't remember how she took down those big glasses, bits, pieces of glasses. Those were not like regular windows glasses. Those were really big panels of glass. And because it was so big, I remember it was really thick, so it was very heavy. I guess she asked someone in the building to help her, or maybe two men. She paid two men or something like this to come take those down. But they didn't remove those bars. And I think someone came to inspect and asked him to take those bars, to those long metal bars, which were welded. So I do remember one night, I don't know why she did it at night, perhaps so nobody is seeing her. I don't know. She took like a small chair. She took a saw and she started to saw those bars, like those were had attachment points, metal attachment points. And she saw by herself those bars. And I do remember we were at the about 3/4 floor. I do remember when she cut the last weld, the bar went by the balcony into the street, actually onto the sidewalk. Fortunately, no one was passing by. So this was one maybe fun story. Oh, and those big glasses, she put them, or someone put them on the balcony, like on the wall. And perhaps a few weeks or maybe a few days later, we had a big earthquake in the 86. I can tell you the date. 86, there was one of the big earthquakes in Romania. And maybe if I don't forget, I will tell you about that earthquake, because I was at home at that moment. And those glasses, those pieces of glasses that were sitting in the balcony got completely shattered. And I do remember those really thick glass. And she had to carry bits by bits. She cut herself. She had to carry it all downstairs to the bin. Anyhow, that's what happened, because Ceausescu didn't like anesthetic balconies. He had this idea of Bucharest and of the rest of the country that it's like the image of socialism, that he thought that those apartment blocks were the image of socialism. A strange image, you need to admit, but that image had to be more or less perfect for him. Now, two more things. Let's take this one first. Now, I told you that it was really difficult to get food, and meat was the worst thing to purchase. And it seems, I've again never seen this, but I've seen movies showing this after 89, movies made after 89. So it has to be true. It has to be true. It seems that although this was illegal, and I really mean illegal, if you would get caught with this, perhaps you could go in jail. It seems that there were some self and more imaginative people that were keeping a pig on their balcony at the apartment building. It seems that this is not really a myth. There were really perhaps people who were just grow, I don't know how to take a small piggy, keep it on the balcony and feed him with the rests from the meal, or maybe whatever he could give, bread or something like this. And it seems that they will keep a pig, right? Pork, because in Romania, pork and pig is the same thing. That's why I'm confusing them. A pig on the balcony until the pig was fat enough. They would cut the pig and just put that meat into the fridge, give it to sell it, a part of it, and so it seems this happened. Actually, I've never seen it myself. But this was kind of, getting around the problem, basically. But it seems it was illegal because the people, farmers that would had a cow or a pig, it was illegal to cut them. It was illegal to kill them and just to get the meat from them. They had at least to get part of the meat to the state and the rest maybe for themselves. But it was illegal to kill without approval or something like this, and not to share the meat with the state. It was illegal. So that's strange, even in the countryside. Now, one of the things that you will perhaps talk to a Romanian and ask that person, what do you remember about Ceausescu times? Most surely, quite a few people will tell you that we were sitting at home at night in the evening. We were just whatever cooking or talking or doing homework. And all of a sudden, the power will be cut off. Poof. It's just like I'm staying now, and all of a sudden, darkness. And we knew this very, very well. We were very used to it. We didn't know, it wasn't programmed. It wasn't a time, a specific hour, a specific day. It's just completely random, but usually it happened in the evening when it was dark outside. I do remember perhaps winter days when it was darker outside. So it will just happen out of the blue, and this was because it was just rationalized. The electric power was just trying to do economy on it. It's just it wasn't a defect or something like this. It's really rationalized. And you will ask many Romanians, if you want, that were living back then, do you remember when the lights would be, the power would be cut off in your block apartment? Everybody, I think, is going to remember those days. So we did it. We did simply had candles, and I did just if the light will turn off, I would just keep doing my homework on the candle light, just like back in the days. And obviously, you just don't watch TV and stuff. And this is a sad, perhaps, story, because one of the times when I went to sing for Ceausescu, I went to this parade or whatever. We were hundreds of kids and were singing and recording. Maybe I need to explain that in another video. Those moments when I spent actually inside the television, state television, we did record for many, many hours. It was crazy difficult. And the guy who was responsible at that place, he was nice enough to tell us that the next Wednesday, 8 o'clock, you just open your TV screen, and during the single only hour of the program a day, you will see yourself singing in there. And guess what happened that very Wednesday? At that very moment, I could not see myself. Not even this much of satisfaction. All right, thanks for watching, and see you next time.